By default, AutoCAD sets up the UCS in a world coordinate system. That means that the origin is at coordinates 0, 0, 0, a 0 for each axis. In AutoCAD LT, there are only two, X and Y. So it sets up the origin at those coordinates of 0, 0, and that angles facing east or to the right of your screen start at 0 degrees. So this line here is drawn at 0 degrees. This line here is drawn at 90 degrees. This line is 180. This line is 270. And then back to 360 being the same as 0. That way AutoCAD knows where everything is and you can interact with it accordingly. Well, there are times when you need to work with a different coordinate system. An example might be of a surveyor who needs to work with a coordinate system that is offset and maybe even rotated from like a point of commencement or some other land-based marker. I've opened up the civil example-imperial file to kind of give you an idea. This road and these lots are right in the middle and aligned with our user coordinate system. But what if we needed the road and lots to match this line here of the parcel? Well, we can draw lines with it and work in it, but we have to go through extra steps. We can do that. And that's where making a customized UCS or user coordinate system comes in very handy. Now what we want to do is to use the UCS command to create or change the current UCS. And we can save it for later use. It can help us make special views for our drawings. It can do a lot of things in it. So to get started, just type in UCS and press enter. Or you can go up to the ribbon and go to the View tab. And here you have different preset views, top, bottom, left, right. These are all for the different 3D views. You can go to the View Manager to help create or make some. Or you can go up to the ribbon. Go to the View tab, and you need the coordinate panel. Now by default, this coordinate panel doesn't show up. I'm not sure why it's set that way, but out of the box, that's what's happening. So we want it in here because we want to use our user coordinate system settings. Right-click anywhere in the top of this gray area on the ribbon where there's no text. And go to the Show Panels. And if there are panels in here that you don't want to use, you can easily turn them off and on. But we want to show the coordinates panel for what we're doing here. So I'm going to go to it and click it and turn it on. That will load our coordinates panel. Here we can get to all of our UCS controls. We want to get to the UCS command, and this is it right here. One thing to note is the UCS icon. It is selectable, and most of the functionality here in the coordinates panel, you can get to here just by selecting it. We'll show you that in a little bit. But if you don't see the UCS icon, come up here and go to the UCS icon button, or just type UCS icon. That will turn it off and on. If you're never going to rotate your view, if you're not going to keep track of your coordinate system, then you can turn it off so that it's not there. And there you go. But for this exercise, we want it on. So we're going to keep it on. So now if we go to the UCS command, click it, we can make changes all we want to this UCS. Now you see here in the command line, we have different options that we can use. There are several of them, and you use the option according to the information you have and according to what you want to do. So you can create a new UCS from the face of an object, from a named view, from the line work of an object. You can go to a previously used UCS. You can go to a saved view. You can go back to the world coordinates, or you can make a change according to the X, Y, or Z axis, or on the Z axis alone. The Z axes are available in AutoCAD LT. So if I pick object, or I type in OB, and remember in the command line when it gives you options to type in, the parts that are in blue you'll be able to type in. So I can type in OB for object. Now I need to just follow the instructions. I pick the object that I want to align my UCS to. Let's say it's this line right here. And as I put my cursor over the top, it will highlight and show you what it's going to look like. Now, you can have your X and your Y rotate on it and come from different directions. Do you want your Y to be at the top or the bottom of this view? Well, to change that, just go to the different end of the line. This is the way I want mine to show, so I'm going to pick it. Now, it doesn't rotate your view. It still looks the same, but you notice the icon is different and my crosshairs have been rotated. So if I draw a line and I turn on my ortho by pressing F8, that will constrain my line work to the X and Y axis. So now I can draw lines that are parallel to either of these lines in the axis. If I draw something like a rectangle, it's right there. It follows it perfectly. Now, to draw a line like this, I would have to go into several different steps, into a long procedure, but I can draw it that way without switching my UCS. That's possible. But in this case, I don't have to. So to get everything back, I can go to UCS, and in this case, since my last UCS that I used was the world coordinate system, I can hit previous, or I can just hit W for world again, and that resets it. So it's very easy to do. Now let's look at another option here. UCS, I can pick the face of something, find a named view, previous view, or I can go about the x-axis or about the y-axis. I'll turn off my ortho command. You can see me rotating it about the x-axis. Now it doesn't look like it's changed much, but that's because it rotated it about the x-axis, so it's kind of spinning around it. Now let's reset that. Type in UCS and then W for world. Now let's look at it in a much easier view. Hit Z for Z-axis. Since the Z-axis is right here at that corner and it's coming straight at me, right out of the screen, I can rotate my view this way. Now if I know what angle that I'm using, I can type it in, or I can just align it with some other object. But here's my UCS. And I can type in UCS and then W to reset everything. Now before, and you probably saw me do it earlier, type in plan and W for world. That won't rotate my UCS. That only changes my view from wherever it was to the plan view. So there are two slightly different things. When you work in 3D, UCS can be a big help. There is a dynamic UCS feature that will automatically change your UCS to match the face of an object automatically and temporarily while you're working. That's very quick, very easy to work with. It's not available in AutoCAD LT because we don't do 3D in LT. And that's getting a little bit heavy for our course here, but I just wanted to let you know that that is something that's available. Now you can create your new UCS from scratch by picking, several different points, rotating about an axis, matching an object, or using a previously used UCS. Or you can use the UCS icon itself. Here it is, we can find it and pick it. We've talked about grip edits on different things before. This has different grips for different things. So I can pick it here and just rotate the UCS icon, and now my UCS has been changed. You can pick it and rotate back. It can go from either direction. If I hover over it, I can give it different commands here as well, or I can just rotate it. If I go back to the origin part, I can move my UCS so that now this is coordinate 0, 0. I can move just the origin. I can move it and align it. Or I can reset it to the world coordinates. This is very useful, and this is one of the reasons why the coordinate panel no longer shows up by default in AutoCAD, is all of these buttons will have you do just what these few group things can do. Now you can save a UCS, set it up however you want in any method that you want. Then go to the UCS icon and right click. Now again, here you can get to a lot of the different UCS settings and properties. You can change your icon style to look different ways, change the size of it, change the line width, whatever you want to do, change the colors even. And once you make your UCS, you can save it. Go to named UCS and then save, and then type in a name. Give it whatever name you want. Now your UCS is going to be saved over here. This is the view cube. It's another way to navigate inside your drawing. You can click over here, make a new UCS, go to one that's saved, or go back to the world coordinate system. So as I'm working, and if I want to, I can go to my UCS, create an object from here, and now I can give it another name. Right click, named UCS, save, and I can call it whatever I want. I can call this one parcel view. So now I can quickly navigate between my different views. Just come up to the view cube and select the view you want. And you're very quickly working in your different views. That's very handy and a very useful tool. Now, another way you might want to use the UCS is if you're making an isometric drawing, or maybe a PNID sheet where you need to work at specific angles. You can create those. You can create a UCS, let's say at 45 degrees. I select my UCS and I grip edit it. I go to 45 degrees. I can save this view, call it 45 degrees. And now, my ortho turned on, I can draw a box that's at 45 degrees. I can switch back to my regular UCS, and I can start drawing a 3D looking box. Very easily, with very little effort. Though it's not in 3D, I've just drawn an isometric view, and it makes it easy to work in that. And I can rotate it back and forth very easily for different things. So there are a lot of ways to use or to utilize the user coordinate system to customize your working situation depending on what you need to do, and it will make drawing things easier, especially with the ortho command turned on. There are two drawing aids in AutoCAD called Grid and Snap. They often work together, but you can use them separately from each other as well. Snap is a toggle setting that is either on or off, and you turn this on or off by pressing the F9 button, or by clicking on the snap icon in the status bar, which is found right here. Right now it's off. When I click it, the icon is highlighted blue, and the command line will tell you that your snap is on. Off, on. What the snap feature does is it restricts your mouse movements to specific increments on a grid. That grid can either be visible or invisible. Right now my grid is visible. You can set these increments to whatever value you need it to be. If you need to draw objects at incremental units or factors thereof, then snapping is a great way to go. It helps you to draw in these increments every time without doubt and without tedious data entry. The snap technique is not very useful though when you are zoomed way out or you're too far away, because the farther you're zoomed out, then the more difficult it will be to see where you're snapping to. So it's a relative thing. You'll have to pay close attention to your coordinates in this case. When you snap, you are snapping to a defined grid. That grid can be made either visible or invisible with a grid feature. It's a toggle, so you can turn it off or on by pressing the F7 key. Grid off or grid on. Or you can go to the status bar and click on the grid icon. Again, when it's on, the grid icon will be highlighted blue. A lot of times I like to work with a grid on because, well, it's a grid and it helps me to draw. It's like working with graph paper to a certain degree. With snap off, I can't select any of these lines. And as I pan around, they move. If I zoom in or zoom out, conduct a regen, meaning regen my screen. I can't do anything with them. They're just a visual aid, but that's okay. It's the same way with drawing on graph paper. They're just a visual aid. When the snap feature is turned on, it's also a visual guide, not just an aid, but it's a guide, and it will tell you where you're going to snap to. As long as you set your grid to be the same increments or units as your snap. Now, to change the snap in the grid settings, you need to open up the Drafting Settings dialog box. You can do this by right-clicking on the O snap or grid icon in the status bar. Right-click and go to the settings. There are a lot of different tabs in here to set up a lot of different things, but what we're worried about right now is the Snap and Grid tab. If you're on one of these others, or you can't see it, you have buttons over here that will scroll you through all of your different tabs. But we want the Snap and Grid tab. You can turn your grid or snap off or on right by here, and you can change the settings throughout. In the grid area of the tab, you can select the number of units each snap location will be apart. You can make the X or the horizontal distance to be the same as the Y, or you can make them different. You can set up your snap and grid increments to be the same, or you can make them different. I would tend to try to keep them the same, but you don't have to. So right now, the way our settings are in this file is that you have a snap point and a grid point at every half of a unit. And your grid is drawing a major line, these thick lines, every 5 units. Now you can change these to show where they're being displayed or where they're not in 2D model space, 3D model space, block editor, etc. You can also change it to subdivide below your grid. You can follow the dynamic UCS or not. So as you see here, as I zoom in and out, it keeps redrawing the grid with those settings. If you go back to your drafting settings window and you uncheck this box right here, the adaptive grid, it won't adapt anymore. As you zoom in and out, it stays at the size you've told it to, which is very useful from time to time. With Snap-on, as you can see, my cursor automatically snaps to lines on the grid. That's very useful. That's like drawing on graph paper. So I can draw from just about any point on this grid and know that I'm drawing accurately. Note the coordinates in the bottom left of my screen. There aren't any decimals being used because we don't have our grid set up that way. It only goes to 0 or 0.5 because we have everything set to 0.5 units. So I guess some decimals are being used in this case. But what I mean is it doesn't go way out. Like now, when I'm free to move around, this is what's happening. So when you turn the grid on, you can see that a lot of times it has limits and sometimes it doesn't. You can change that by changing your limits. I change my limits, and now I'm going to my drafting settings. You can type in OS, and that'll take you to Object Snap, but then you just go to the Snap and Grid tablet. And you can tell it to follow the limits. So if you want it to go beyond your limits, turn this on here. But now we're going to turn it off. And now it will only show the grid and our limits. What are the limits? Well, your limits, quite literally, will limit where you can draw at. There are a lot of different uses for limits, and a lot of them aren't really used as much anymore because of other tools and features that have been put into AutoCAD over the years. But you can set your limits by just typing in the word limits. And then you can manually type in your coordinates, or you can just pick a point. And you'll pick your bottom left corner, and then your top right. And this is your drawing area. This is where the grid will be displayed, and this is where you are limited to. Many users find the snap and grid features to be annoying. However, many users find them to be very useful. I would agree with both perspectives. The ability to control where your crosshairs go without having to think about it is very handy when you're first learning to use AutoCAD. Having a grid to help you visualize the length and the location of your drawing objects is also useful. Learning how big something is on the screen can take some time. Many users have a hard time adapting to that. So having a visual aid could help you in this case. Eventually, and it may take some time though, you will be able to understand how big something is on your screen. Don't worry if it takes you a while. In fact, some people never get the hang of it, but that's okay. If you have more than one object in your drawing, and trust me, you're going to, you will find that you need to navigate within your drawing. One way to get back and forth in your drawing is to use the pan command. Panning is not that difficult, not anymore. For many releases, we have had real-time panning. That means that you can see where you're panning and the screen moves along with it. There are many ways to get to the pan command. Let's open up a file. Any file is fine. We just need to have something where we can see we're moving in. Open up one you've worked with before, or just draw some objects in there very quickly. It doesn't matter. If you're not in any commands, just sitting around and panning sounds like fun, you can type in the pan command, P-A-N. Press enter. You'll get a little hand icon that comes up on your screen. Now the idea of panning is that you grab a hold of a place on your drawing and move it out of the way so that you can see something else. It's kind of like taking a piece of paper or a drawing, holding onto it somewhere, and then moving it across your table. So with the pan command started and activated, click and hold that click somewhere, and then move your mouse. Now you grab that point, and you're moving it from one part of your screen to another part. Then let go. That was a pan. You didn't change any of the objects in your drawing, you're just changing your view. So the entire screen kind of moved. So that's kind of good. So now I can get from this corner to this corner. If you right click, you can exit out of the pan command. Now there are other ways to start the pan command. You can just type the letter P on the keyboard and pan. Hit escape to get out at any time. Because pan, might be too many letters for you to have to type. Or you can find it in the ribbon or find it in the shortcut menu. If you have no command activated, you can right click and hold and go to the pan command. It's right here. You can go to the navigation bar, click the pan command, and you can pan around. You can also go up to the ribbon, go to the View tab, the Navigate in 2D panel, and click on the pan command. Those are great, but nowadays, most of us, and me especially, don't even use the pan command. We just use the scroll wheel on our mouse. So if you have the scroll wheel, and if you don't, please get one. It'll be one of the most efficient based things that you'll be able to do in AutoCAD. Click the scroll wheel and hold it. Pan around and let go. That's so much easier. And it's transparent. We talked about transparent commands before, and pan was one of them, zoom being another one. You can use the scroll wheel for it while you're in a command. I can draw a line, pan over, and I'm still drawing my line. Quite useful. The pan command, as we said, can be a transparent command. That means you can use it while you're working with another command. Otherwise, you're restricted to using only one command at a time. I can't draw a line and a circle at the same time, but I can pan while I'm drawing a line or drawing a circle. So if you pick the pan command from anywhere, it will automatically be a transparent command. That means from the ribbon, from the navigation bar, from my scroll wheel. So if I draw a line, I can come over here to my nav bar, press the pan command, move around, hit escape, and then finish drawing my line. Or again, I can just pan with my scroll wheel and draw my line. Otherwise, if you draw a line, pick your first point, type in an apostrophe, and then type in pan. Press escape when you're finished, then the second point for your line. Most of the time though, this is kind of a mute point because you're going to use your scroll wheel. What else would you do? Why would you take the time to move your mouse, your cursor, to the nav bar, or to fumble through the ribbon just to find the pan command? Use the scroll wheel. But you do have options if you don't have a scroll wheel available. The zoom command is quite simple, but it can be very complicated. There are very many choices to choose from. but yet most of us use only 2, and that's fine. The zoom command is the act of moving closer or farther away from your drawing data in order to get a different view. It doesn't change your drawing in any way, not the line work, not the information in it, just how you're looking at it. There are many ways to zoom. You can go to the ribbon and click on the View tab, then the Navigate panel. You can get to zoom this way, which are right here. The zoom button on the ribbon is in a flyout, and you have all of your different options of zooming. We'll take a look at these here very quickly. Or you can just type the word zoom, Z-O-O-M, on your command line. And then you have all of your options available to you. Now, let's take a look at each one. You have the zoom extents. This will zoom you to the maximal extents of all the objects. So if I'm zoomed in really close right here, and I come up and hit zoom extents, it zooms me all the way out so that I can see everything so that it fills up my screen. I can draw a line up here, and I can use a zoom window to zoom in to that little spot, and then come back to my zoom extents, and boom, it zooms it up. Now if I delete that object, my extents are now down here, not up there. So if I go to zoom extents, that's where it will take me. Zoom extents is a great one. It helps you to zoom all the way out so you can see everything in your file, so that now you can zoom back in to a specific spot. A great way to zoom to a specific spot is with the zoom window. Now if I want to zoom into just this area here, I pick one point and it creates a box. Wherever this box is, that's where I'm going to zoom to. It will fill my screen with that box. And there you go. That's cool. Now another one is previous. This will just take you back to your previous zoomed state. It's a great way to go back and forth. I can do a real-time zoom. This will let you to zoom in and out in, real time. So you have a magnifying glass with the plus and minus. I will click a spot and move my mouse forward or backwards, up or down. Left and right really doesn't do it. It's up and down, and will zoom me in real time. Once I let go, I can pick another spot and zoom in and out there. So that's another way. If you want to go back and forth, kind of like a sports commentator going back and forth. He zooms in, he zooms out. He zooms in, he zooms out. You get the idea. I can zoom to all. This will zoom to all visible objects that are in my file. Again, it's very similar to zoom extents, but it's different. So let's do some stuff here to show you. This is my zoom extents. Now I can turn some of these things off. Okay, now this is all that I'm going to be able to see. Let's go back to my View tab, go to the zoom window, and let's zoom in to this little green box. Now, zoom extents will take me out to the extent of my drawing. And then zoom all is to where all of my objects are. Pretty cool. Let's undo this stuff, put everything back on. So you can see they're slightly different. And honestly, I never really use the zoom all. The zoom extents I use all the time. Now, the dynamic zoom is a little different. It sort of does a zoom extents and then allows you to create a new window. So this is nice in that you can make a small window and then move it around. Pick where you want to go. Okay, so if I'm zoomed in really far, I can do two things. I can zoom extents and then zoom window to get to where I want to go. That's several steps, several commands. But if I do a zoom dynamic, it automatically zooms me out, and then I can zoom in to where I want to go. Position my box where I want, click, and then drag to the right to make it bigger, and I move up or down to kind of change my position a little bit. This will resize your box. Find your point, click it again, and then I can move it to where I want it to go. If I want it to go right here, I can right click and it will zoom me right in. So let's do that again, but a little bit more quickly and less commentary. So I can do a couple of commands in one way, and I don't have to zoom all the way out, pan across, and zoom back in. I can just zoom out and zoom in. So that's kind of cool. I can zoom by a scale factor. I can just type something in. It goes in by a factor of 10. Or if I want to scale it again, I can do a decimal. So the decimal will make things look bigger, and a whole number will make things look smaller. Now I can zoom center. Put in my magnification, and it will essentially just zoom me into that spot and center it on my screen. It's a little cumbersome, can be a little difficult. Not really useful a lot of times, but it's there. Zoom object is really cool because then you can pick an object or objects, press enter, and it zooms you right in. So this is cool if I'm, zoom extents, I'm way out and I want to go to zoom object, say that box, enter, and boom, it takes me right to it. I don't have to guess how big my window needs to be or anything. It just finds it and takes me there. And these are real-time zoom in and outs. It just zooms in a little bit, or it zooms out just a little bit. So those are nice for little presentations that you're doing. If you're presenting to a client at a big conference, you can use those. And you can get to all of those commands if you type in the word zoom. All of those are available here. Now, whichever flyout for the zoom that you used last, it will be available right here in the button, so you can just click the button and it will take you there. Now, another way to zoom is with your scroll wheel on your mouse. And this is very simple. And the majority of time, this is all you're going to need. You may never come to this button at all, but you can if you want. See how much easier that was? And wherever I put my mouse or the cursor, that is the focus point for my zooming. So you just scroll your scroll wheel, roll it in, roll it out. That's very useful. And it's also a transparent command. So if I draw a line, then I can zoom in and draw the rest of my line. And if you double click your scroll wheel, that's a zoom extents. So between the zoom extents and the zoom in and out, the majority of your zooming needs are done with your scroll wheel. Throw in the pan command, and I can navigate to anywhere very quickly. Now, another quick thing to do is to type in the zoom command, hit W for window, and there you go. And with a command alias of just Z, I can go Z, W very quickly, or Z and E for extents. I can navigate through that very quickly as well. So the most of your zooming and panning needs, your navigating needs in AutoCAD will be done with your scroll wheel. Or you do have available a plethora of zoom type options that you can use. To finish up this chapter, let's review what we've talked about with a little project. We'll just go over a few simple steps that will allow us to practice some of the concepts in this chapter. Most chapters in this video will have a similar project at the end. Let's begin. To start off, let's make a brand new file. You may be in a new file already, but we're going to start off with the brand new file so that we get familiar with the process and all the steps involved in it. There are several ways, as we talked about, to start a new file. You can just type in new, but let's go through a lot of the steps. To get you used to working with the ribbon, go up to the application menu, which is that big red A in the top left corner. Click New, Drawing. This opens up the template folder. We want to use the template file called acad.dwt. Click Open, and here we go. We want to create an architectural drawing using feet and inches for our units. So we need to click on the application menu again to check our units. go down to Drawing Utilities, and then Units. Okay, we need to set this up. It's already in inches, and it should be for you. If not, click on the arrow and select inches. Now we want to go to architectural. So you go to the length type, architectural. Precision of 1/16 of an inch is fine for this project. As for the angles, let's make them decimal degrees and a precision with 1 decimal place. For what we're going to do, this will be satisfactory. And click OK. Now, it's always a good practice to save your file early on and then very regularly after that. There's always a chance that something will happen and you will lose your work. AutoCAD crashes, especially once you get into a very complicated file. And then when you start adding references to other CAD files or to other data sets, etc., then it just bogs it down. And if your hardware isn't up to snuff, then you could have troubles. And if your hardware is absolutely top of the line, it could still be a problem. So it's just a common thing that happens with AutoCAD. It's not your fault, it just happens. So you have to be prepared for it. So let's save the file. You can save it anywhere that you'd like to, but make sure it's in a place where you know where to go. I suggest making a folder for all of your CAD work here, somewhere on your computer, on an external hard drive, a jump drive, something. You could even save your work in Autodesk 360, which is Autodesk's cloud-based support platform. There you'll be able to save files to the cloud, and you can access them from anywhere. You can even access them from your mobile device. If your hard drive crashes, if your computer explodes and bursts into flames, you'll still have your files available to you on the cloud. AutoCAD 2013 and AutoCAD LT 2013 have a lot of integration built into it with the cloud. So let's save the file. Click on the application menu, and you can click save because we started with a template file, so it's not saved already. Browse to a place where you want to save it and save it. You have some options here that you can set up your automatic online saving properties. Just click on it. It will open up your information, give you some information and data on how much cloud space you've used. I've only used 5.7 megabytes of the 3 gigabytes that are provided free to every customer. But you can enable the cloud storage. You can even sync your settings in AutoCAD. And you can set it to automatically save every file you work on. Now, if you're working with a lot of files that are very large and have a lot of memory, you could fill up that 3 gigabytes. So be careful. For now, you may want to keep it on, but it's up to you. And to get to Autodesk 360, you can click on the button here. When you're done, click OK, and that will save your settings. If you want to save it to Autodesk 360, you can just click right here. That will open up a folder that you have automatically saved up in your hard drive that automatically syncs with the cloud. Save your files here if you'd like. We're going to name this file Chapter Project. This is Chapter 4, so we'll call it Chapter 4 Project. You can call it whatever you'd like. Then click Save. Now, since this file has been synced to the cloud, every time you save it, your cloud file will be updated. You can go to the Online tab right here on the ribbon to sync your files, to look at your files that you have, to upload them, to download them, etc. All right, that was a little extra I threw in there, but let's get back to where we're at on our chapter project. So now that we've set up our file, set the units, and we've saved it, keep in mind that it's a good practice to save your file regularly. So save early and save often. There's always a chance that something will happen and you'll lose your work, and that's bad. So let's draw something. I know we haven't talked a lot about drawing something, but that's coming. Now we've built a foundation on how to interact with AutoCAD, and then we understand the interface now, and we know where things are. And so if we need to find something, we can. So let's take a look here. Let's draw a rectangle. Now to do that, you can just come up to the Home tab on the ribbon and the Draw panel and click Rectangle. Now, we just want to draw something here so that we have an object to work with. So you can pick anywhere on your screen. Pick your first point with the left click of the mouse, move it up to the top right, just anywhere. It can be small, it can be large, it won't matter. And click again. And there you go. You drew a rectangle. Good job. Now, we're going to do something else. Let's work with the grid. By default, in that AUTOCAD.dwt file, the grid is on, or at least should be. If it's not, that's fine, but we want to turn it on. So if it isn't, you can come down here to your status bar and toggle it off or on by clicking it. Or you can press the F7 key. Now we also want to turn on our snap functionality, but let's set some of this stuff up first. Come down to your status bar, right click, and go to settings. This will get you to your settings here. There are a lot of different things you can mess with. Bowler tracking, object snap, 3D object snap, but not in AutoCAD LT, or your snap and grid. This is what we want to do. So let's turn it on. Right now it's set to space everything at 1/2 inch. Because we're using architectural units of inches, 1 unit is 1 inch long. So keep that in mind when we're drawing. Now let's tell it to make a grid line every 10 units. So let's change this to 10, because that's what we're going to snap to. And we want it to be equal X and Y spacing. So keep that locked in. And now come down here for the grid, type in 10 units. Okay. Now, you can see here our grid is quite large, but that's okay. Make sure your snap mode is turned on, and let's do some work. So pick the rectangle. You can use a crossing window, you can use an inclusion window, you can use the fence, or you can just select it. Because it's a little small, we want to get rid of it. Once you've selected it, you can use the erase command, which is right here on the ribbon, in the modify panel. Or, once you've selected something, you can press the delete key, and that's the same as erasing. So that's a real quick tip if you want to get rid of something. Select it, and then hit the delete key. It's very quick, very efficient. Now let's double click on the scroll wheel. This will do a zoom extents. See, we don't have anything here, so that's okay. So now with your snap mode on, let's start to draw something. Let's use your scroll wheel to zoom in or zoom out, pan around a little bit. And one thing you might find that happens in AutoCAD is once you zoom out so far, it won't let you zoom anymore. This is an old setting that's in AutoCAD that's been around for a long time. And it just sort of says, I can't go any farther. So what you need to do is execute what's called a regen all. And that is just typing in REA. That will refresh the drawing area. Tell AutoCAD, hey, reset. Doesn't delete anything, it doesn't change anything. It just sort of clears out the memory and clears out a little bit of stuff on your screen, smooths out arcs and circles, and allows you to zoom out again. See, even your pan will get stuck, just like this. This is going to happen to you all the time. So just remember REA. And there you go. It gets real annoying from time to time, but once you know what to do, it's a quick fix to get through it. Now let's start drawing a line. Let's type line on the command line. Press enter. Let's draw a triangle. Now remember that we're snapping to specific places on the grid. That can help us line up our lines very easily. So pick a point, snap, snap again, and then just snap to the end. There's a triangle. See how easily the snap function allowed us to work? If we draw a line again, I can come to this point and draw in some more triangles. I can keep drawing until I finish off the command. And there you go. It's very easy to draw things with Snap-on. It's very quick, and it's very simple. So if you're an architect and you're laying out a room, you can set up your grid work so that it's to a certain unit. And that unit could be, the width of your wall. It could be, 1 foot, 1 meter. And you can very quickly draw some shapes. Okay, I snapped to the wrong spot here, so let's undo that. go up to your quick access toolbar and click the undo arrow. Well, it undid my whole inside box. Yes, because we did all of that in one command, in one function. So we need to draw that back. Draw a line, start the line command again. And let's draw. We'll keep the width of this box on the inside of the other box to just one grid space wide. When you're done, press enter. Okay, so we've drawn some things that we've snapped to. Now let's zoom out and let's draw some lines, making another box to exact coordinates. So start the line command again. And let's tell AutoCAD to go to specific coordinates. Let's go to coordinate 10, 60. Press enter. Now remember, these units are in inches. So coordinate of 10, which brings us right to this snap point anyway, is at 10 inches along the x-axis. And then a coordinate of 60 will brings us up 60 inches on the y-axis. So that's great. So if we want to draw a line now that is 50 units long, well, we can snap to 5 different places here on the grid because we have set up our grid to be 10 units long, or